2, 1. Emma, let's continue with the conversation and try and knit some of the bits that we've talked about together a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of you being a business advisor and looking at all the kind of things, the bits that I want to pick out of the conversation in particular primarily are mentoring.
Yes.
About creating smaller work groups, and also if I was hit by a bus, because I think that's such a critical conversation, right? And about addressing those in particular to businesses and the value, because it's a fundamental shift in terms of, the bean counter, right, to somebody who is now a coach, an advisor, a mentor, and all of those things to the business that you're actually dealing with.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure by changing that profile and by you and the strength of your personality, now people see that and see you as a business in a completely different way.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely been a shift in the type of clients that we work for. And the more that we educate people about what we actually do, so funnily enough, you said bean counter. When I go to networking events, the opening line is, we're not just bean counters. We're so much more than that. And we want to be more than that.
I'd take some jelly beans with you if I were you and give them a jelly bean and go, would you like one of my beans? Because they all come in different shapes and different sizes.
Different sizes, exactly, just like our clients. So it's getting the message out there that your accountant doesn't just have to be somebody that you see after your year end who gives you that terrible news of how much tax you're paying. They can be so much more. And accountants in general have a lot of skills that aren't necessarily utilised in that type of work. So it's important that as an industry we do change and we move towards advisory. And that is something that our mentor will obviously gives the message out to the whole of the accounting community, and he has done for quite some number of years. He was the first accountant in the UK to adopt cloud accounting. So he was a trailblazer in that respect. And there's so much that we've learned from him. But in turn, there's so much that our clients can learn from us and so many ways that we can support them over and above calculating a tax liability. And getting that message out is the challenge for us, is that people don't see it as a load of text that's AI generated that basically says, oh, we can be everything to you. And it's not necessarily everything from us as individuals. It's we can point people in the right direction. We can give them people that they can trust to support them, make the connections with people that are going to be important to them moving their business forward. And that can be connections in terms of getting them sorted legislatively. It could be emotional support. It could be that I know somebody who has gone through something similar that could really support them through a moment in time. There are a lot of pinch points as businesses grow, as I know you'll be aware of, where you face certain challenges. Growing a team of people, especially, can be challenging, and you tend to hit certain points in time with growing a team of people that are known to provide an extra element of challenge. So preparing a business for that, telling them when you hit this size of team, unless you have your systems and processes right in the background, you're going to experience some issues.
Yeah, my life experience would say, and turnaround is the biggest challenge that most businesses that I've ever dealt with have, are people.
Exactly. But they don't have to be. And I think it's getting that message across and setting up a business from the very beginning in a way that's sustainable for the future goals. So that it might just be the business owner right now, but in 3 years' time, they might be predicting that they have 50 staff. And that might be really realistic. But how do you go from nobody in a team to 50 in a team in a relatively short period of time?
I think if you make that investment, and you make that investment, the thing that I miss more than anything else are the people.
Yes, exactly. And networking is fantastic from that perspective. You know, there is a lot of clients that do work alone and will always work alone. That is their business model. So for them, they're potentially in a home office environment. They're not out speaking to people on a day-to-day basis, or the people that they are speaking to are their clients, and they don't necessarily want to have that other level of open and honest conversation. So that's where we come in as a support network, but it's also where we can offer an extended support network and recommend places for them to be. Different networking groups suit different people, for example, in terms of building a support network of other businesses around you that are providing you perhaps with a bit of reassurance about the decisions that you're making, or challenging you on those decisions, because they're not always, your thought process might be rigid. You might have preconceptions and think you have to do something in a certain way, and they might open your mindset a little bit and challenge you on some of your ideas, which can be really beneficial.
But I also think in our conversations we become very clear about understanding that if you want to look at innovation, inventiveness and creativity, then look at different generations.
Yes, exactly. Take advantage of that. And if you get out and meet other businesses, you also do find those different generations. You know, I'm in groups where, say, the youngest person's 16, but the eldest person's 96. So you have an 80 years worth of life experience in the middle. And everyone will give you a different opinion, and you might be trying to sell a product or service to all of those generations, but you might need to understand the different generational needs in your marketing, for example. You might need to understand your end user in a different way, so you can test your ideas on those people in that group. And
I think actually it's quite interesting, because one of the things that I now realise and recognise is that it's easy to get out of touch with generations.
it is, yes. And I attended an event recently where there was a speaker who would be a great contact for you potentially, who has just written a book on exactly that, on the different generations and misconceptions about each generation as well, but also reasoning for why each generation has these norms and what that looks like. And that was incredibly interesting.
I mean, so while I've been away, and I went away actually at the beginning of this year to ostensibly, because it's my big life passion as well as rugby. So I went to the Lions to watch the Lions in Australia.
Fantastic. I saw them in New Zealand when I was there. We just got lucky.
Anyway, I went there to meet up with my son, and we had the most incredible weekend. We went down to Melbourne. He lives in Sydney. We flew down to Melbourne. We stayed, and I was with two of his mates. I was going to say friends, but you're mates if you're in Australia. So we're four blokes together going to the rugby, and it was an incredible experience and great fun for me. At times, I kind of I reflected to myself, and I thought, oh, Martin, you're beginning to feel and look a bit old. But it was just so great to be there. And that great Max Boyce line, I was there, came back. And I actually was there. I was in Melbourne when we won the series effectively, because winning that game at the very end was so important. And I can't emphasize to people how much the quality of the relationships is so important. And it was very blokey, four blokes together, but we behaved ourselves impeccably. Stayed in a lovely hotel in the middle of Melbourne, because I lived and worked in Melbourne, and we actually went on a kind of back to where I used to live trip, which was right down by the ferry, which went over to Tasmania. And I had an apartment there, and I was walking, and the whole place had changed so dramatically.
Yeah.
And it was incredible to watch and believe that we live in this world of change. Now, if we look at young people, so for example, it's easy in my generation to look at young people and say, oh, you're the beanbag generation, and how you access information. I've never heard the phrase beanbag generation before, but somebody used it the other day in a conversation, so it's now part of my lexicon. The beanbag generation, and we did have that conversation a few minutes ago.
Yes, we did.
But the beanbag generation, in terms of that, it's also to recognise that they access information. They watch TikTok and they see things which I don't do at all.
Yeah, I've got one of my clients does incredibly well on TikTok, product-based business. But I've got another client who is, I would say, 20 years older than the one mentioned before. And I said, you need to get on TikTok. Oh, no, can't possibly be in front of a camera. There's absolutely no way I'm doing that. Was really closed off to it. But you've got to sometimes embrace the future, haven't you? And then you need to know that is where people are purchasing now as well. You know, maybe our generation would Google something. They'd quite often look on the TikTok shop.
But also there's an accusation, and there is an accusation, and I see loads of videos, for example, on YouTube, which talk about the fact that you're using ChatGPT wrong. You're using it like Google.
Yes.
And I kind of go, I don't care how you're using it as long as you are using it and looking at it. Don't deride it. Don't criticize it. Just recognize that it's a feature of what we've got now.
It is, and it can be really advantageous, obviously with the caveat of be very careful with it as well, because AI is learning from what you're searching. So, for example, I asked it to calculate employers' national insurance from something and it got completely the wrong rate. It had pulled the old rate off the internet rather than the new rate. So it's having that, be aware of its limitations as well as embracing it. Whereas one of my friends, she was in a shop and she needed to buy a blood pressure monitor, just as an example. And there was 2 different models, different price points. So she put into ChatGPT the 2 models, which one's going to be best for me, essentially. So it gave her a recommendation. So for things like that, she also plans her family's whole meals for the week on ChatGPT. And then it gives her the shopping list, which she then puts into online shop and gets delivered to her house. So that's a seamless process for her family, and to have a nutritious, well-balanced meal plan for the whole week. So
I think actually what's interesting is how it modifies and changes all our behaviours. I can tell you now as an English teacher that if kids had used ChatGPT, I would not be able to recognise all the stuff, except the patterns of their behaviour would say to me, where have they got that from? Why are they so exceptionally good?
yes. And you've got to have an awareness of that now as an employer as well, because inevitably, letters of application, CVs, etc., have come through an AI-generated platform.
They're bound to have done.
Yeah. One of my friends who's an employer had 30 people apply for a job role, and they realised that 6 of them had the same answers to certain questions, where obviously they had all used AI to generate their answers to questions on the application form. So it's it is embrace it, but also have an awareness of when you should use it and when you shouldn't.
I actually used it this last weekend. I got a communication from somebody, and when I got the communication, I was irritated by it, and I could feel myself being irritated. And so I put it into ChatGPT, and I said to ChatGPT, is this passive aggressive?
Right, okay.
And ChatGPT came back to me and said, they didn't only come back to me, they said it's absolutely littered with passive aggressive phrases. And it went to highlight those all the way through. And I thought, well, that's why I felt the way that I did. And it was a check for me, but really important. I knew it was passive aggressive, but at the same time, I just needed it moderating. I didn't have somebody to show it to at work or whatever. I just had me. And I thought, I'm going to ask this question.
It can be an inner voice for people, and people can use it. But I think specifically when you're talking about something like mental health, you need to be a bit careful with it.
I agree.
Because there's been a few instances of where it's perhaps made recommendations to people that you or I, as an actual person talking to them, wouldn't have said a similar thing. So I think it's just, it's great, and it's integrated into a lot of softwares we use, and it's fabulous when it's used in the right way. But it's just trying not to have an over-reliance on it as it becoming your inner voice, trying to remain authentically yourself alongside.
But I think it says to me, even by this admission now, is that because possibly of not having any contact with somebody who may look at the situation or may advise in a different kind of way, we need to have that contact sometimes with other people, show it to other people. And I can understand why young people don't necessarily have that ability to contact other people to find out what do other people think and how they're going to actually make that work.
Yeah, and I suppose that's where the education system could be really helpful, because they could encourage personal interactions and make them more of a normal thing, because I think that's the other side of it, is for young people it's not necessarily the norm to seek out a person's advice. So like you were mentioning earlier, perhaps building a mentoring scheme where people come in to support people and they know they can run those ideas past somebody.
I think it's really important.
It is.
I think the whole concept, the development of two things from this conversation, one of collaboration and two of mentoring are becoming critical, because if you as a mum will also know, particularly with two daughters, and I think girls are much better, I'm sorry I'm being pejorative, but they're much better than boys at sharing where they are and talking about what may be going on. When they come to you sometimes and say, "Ma," in that whiny, "Mum," sort of voice that you put on because you want to find out something as the font of all knowledge, not actually sometimes recognising and realising that you need that as well sometimes.
Yes.
Back. So it is a two-way street, and that communication becomes a two-way street.
Yes, exactly. And that's why we're very collaborative as well with our team. We don't distance ourselves and we're the boss, because you want them to be able to approach you for themselves. But also we will say, what do you guys think of this? How's your perception of this idea? And encourage open and honest feedback. And you're not going to get in trouble for saying something that they think we might not want to hear. And that's quite different in some ways. And some people take a while to get used to that. But
I thought it was quite interesting as well, because in talking to people, trying to give them reassurance as well about doing a podcast or actually appearing on a podcast, I kind of said to somebody else the other day, I said, do you know what? All the people who work with you are going to want to watch that. And they went, oh, no, they're not interested. I went, I think they will be.
Yes, I suppose you never know, do you? You don't
it's an
really
insight.
know.
It's an insight. Some would say an intrusion, but I don't mean it to be an intrusion. I just think it's an insight. It's understanding what's going on below the hood, what's actually making this person tick, and what are they actually doing, and living those values on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah.
So we've learned from you this morning that collaboration is critical, also working and within small units, and if I was hit by a bus. So, let's go.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
No. Let's actually stay on those critical. It's okay, I've got that base covered, but let's actually stay on those things and actually extend that a little bit into also advice about parents and also advice about dealing with school and education, because I think part of the problem that I see is that people have children and never ever have any educational lessons in what to do or how to deal with their children.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think you're offered prenatal classes potentially, but a 6-week program of a 1-hour class, let's face it, doesn't really prepare you for what's going to come over for the rest of your life, really. You don't stop being a parent even when they're an adult, do you? So it's a continuous journey.
It's okay. My kids are approaching, my daughter has actually hit that number, and my son's also approaching 50. And I go, they're big mates, they're friends. And one of the things that I do, and I would say to any parent, and I used to say it to parents when I was teaching, you have to extend to children unconditional love.
Yes. Oh, yeah, 100%.
But you say, yeah. But people don't.
No,
they actually sanction certain things, approve of certain things, and want to tell them what to do. You have to just unconditionally love them.
Let them make their own choices.
Correct.
But that's hard, isn't it?
No, it's incredibly hard.
It's not an easy journey being a parent. There's constant learning involved. And
Mum, I've just smashed up the car.
Yeah.
I still love you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's always something, isn't there, as well? And it changes as they get older. So my brother's children are much younger, and I say to him that it doesn't get easier, it just changes. The challenges change.
The relationship changes.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously we're going through a different relationship change now, with my daughter being off at university, out of the household, living independently, and caring for other people, potentially being in a position to save another person's life.
Sure.
Well, she's still my baby, you know.
Of course she is.
And to me, she's only 19, but she phoned me up the other day. I can do a tracheotomy now. I'm like, okay, wow. As a parent, that you're taking in that fact that your child has transitioned to be an independent person in their own right. But then the next moment they need you for something that you're totally not expecting. And you've got to be able to adapt to that and be open
I think
to
your
that.
pride in that relationship and that reaffirmation from you about that continued unconditional love is probably the most significant thing of all.
Yeah. I'm very proud of her. You know, she had to achieve very high A levels to get onto the course in the first place, and it has been challenging. In her very first year, she had a placement that was 3 hours away, you know, down in Cornwall, which was a new environment for her. So not only was she living alone in university, she made friends very quickly in her halls of residence, but then she had to take herself off and live in a different community and work long shifts and get used to everything that's involved in that, but also witness some of the harder things to deal with in life at a very
Like
young
death.
age. Yes, yeah. And you know, some quite horrific injuries and mental health, and it's a lot for a then 18-year-old to adjust to in life, and you don't know as a parent how much to be involved in that.
I was talking to somebody who I did a previous podcast with, who said two things to me, both of which have still stayed in my brain for quite a while. He worked for the transport police.
Okay.
And so when there was a train crash, he had to go to the scene and actually guard and protect the scene against possibly, before they could move the train and remove some of the bodies from the wreckage and so forth. So this is, as a young man, dealing with things like that, and also dealing with, he never said the word, but dealing with suicide and picking up body parts of people who decided to jump in front of a train.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of trauma, and there is lots of trauma and things are happening in our society. We have policemen who go to road accidents, who pick up pieces and actually deal with people who've died, who go to people's homes to tell them about the death of somebody. And also one of the things that he admitted to, which we talked about, and I think most men are very poor at doing so, is his mental health in terms of the fact that they led the way in dealing with trauma and help and support.
Yeah.
And actually, most blokes don't do that because they go, oh, I don't need that. I'm fine. I'll be great. It's all right, and so forth. But actually, they do need it. And I think the level of support that staff need in the workplace is much, much greater than most people appreciate.
Yeah, which is why we're very aware of it, why we're trying to get the education in place for accountancy in as a whole, really, not just for us as a firm. But we recognise that it's a challenge, and we also recognise that we're maybe one of the few environments where people do feel comfortable to open up, and you don't want to close them off when they feel that they can actually have that conversation openly. But also, you don't want to signpost them to something that's not going to be helpful. You want to be able to making the correct recommendations or offering the correct support in the moment that you can, which is something that we do recognise, and hence that work. But we also have medical insurance in place for all of our team where they can access 24 hours a day mental health support, which is really important because
Absolutely.
they might not want to tell us, and that's fine. That's their personal choice. But I know that it never gets reported back to me. I don't know who has accessed what service, which is really important, the anonymity to it.
And you don't want to either.
No, I don't want to. I'd rather that they felt comfortable to access the services that are there, and I don't know about it. That's fine. I would hope that if they needed support, that they would feel that they could come to us, obviously. But at the same time, I do recognise that people do find that difficult, especially with an employer. So that facility is open to them at all points in time, that they can access that support if they want it.
I went the other evening, actually, on Monday. I went to the cinema to go and watch I Swear, which is a film about a boy who is in school who has Tourette's.
Oh, I have seen the advert. Yes. Did you
And
enjoy
actually,
it?
from an emotional, engaging point of view, it's an extraordinary film. I felt ashamed of the services like the police and the teaching and so forth. Part of the film is it shows this boy actually receiving corporal punishment because of his behaviour with Tourette's. And in that era where people didn't know and didn't understand, it also has a very telling little scene where a policeman pulls up in his car and he's going, oh, what have I done now? What's happened now? And so forth. and the policeman's coming to apologise to him for how he treated him and how he behaved to him before, and how it actually. And I think dealing with disabilities and so forth, and actually accessing that. And if I go back, education and learning, life is a learning, constant, continuous process. And actually, if I go back, and I was going to link it back into a story about somebody who I had, a girl, her name was Michelle, who was in my unit, whose behaviour at times could be absolutely appalling, off the scale. And I remember it took me ages to work it out myself, but she suffered significantly from premenstrual tension. And I didn't know that. Yeah. And I didn't recognise that. But her behaviour was absolutely appalling. And it's only when I knew that and understood that my whole looking and addressing at it was completely different.
That's it, isn't it? It's the education behind understanding different people. We've got some clients that are neurodivergent, and we understand that it's important for them that we communicate potentially in a different way. And it's also, a lot of people do prefer things like visual learning.
Yeah.
So we make sure that we send a video with us talking through what we're sending to people.
Good.
So that they have that opportunity to hear us talking through it. They can mute us if they want. That's absolutely fine. They don't have to listen to us. But the verbal explanation is there, rather than just a heavy load of paper that is potentially meaningless. And
brochures and stuff like that, they won't read those. They don't look at them.
No, or even a set of accounts. It can be just a load of numbers to people. So actually, by giving that visual talking through and using the cursor to go, this is kind of what I'm talking about. I'm on this number. This is why I'm talking about it. This is what it means to you. This is the explanation.
I think you've said something so significant. It's how do people learn?
Yeah, everyone's different.
And I ran a program. With a company, and was actually about teaching people in various ways, and the understanding, and all the trainers who were working on this process was the starting point for me, was teaching them about understanding that people learn in very, very different ways. And just accept that and understand it. Some people want to do, some people want to talk, some people want to be shown, some people do want to watch a video, some people, we all access information in completely different ways.
And that's why you've got to be quite flexible. And I suppose we have an understanding of that because my mum has always worked with children who have different needs for whatever reason. So it's always something that's been talked about in our household. And my husband's parents were foster carers for 25 years. So again, we've had a lot of exposure to a lot of people with very different stories. And I said to you earlier off camera, the video on our YouTube that has the most views is how to access us, where you park, where you walk in, what it looks like when you're greeted in reception, and what the meeting room looks like. It's our most popular video. So that goes to show that people need that or are wanting that in order to feel comfortable with accessing the relationship.
I agree. And I think how people access knowledge, whether it's by watching YouTube, and we need to recognise that if you actually watch it on your technology, whatever that may be, and walking around with it, that you get information in such different ways.
Yeah, and I think having the ability to access information in different ways is really important. So I had a new client inquiry and he said, I'm dyslexic. Please don't communicate with me via email. I don't like it. That's fine. We know that now. That's recorded now. We will make sure that there's a verbal conversation or there's a video or there's something that means that you can access our services in the same way as another person.
I'll just put out a public appeal. Stop responding to my messages by going,
yes.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely fed up.
I think that's a generational thing as well.
I've sat and I've spent time trying to explain what the situation is, and your response, and it happens at every generation that I deal with, is the response. And my association of that is Donald Trump.
Oh, no. Oh, yes.
I know. You may say, but that's why I can feel myself, my innate hate and dislike for that. And that's how people sometimes speak.
Yes.
And that's how they actually communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get a lot of that from the younger generation. You'll say something and you're looking probably for a sentence in response, and you'll get exactly that. You'll just get the thumbs up.
It's the way that communication takes place. It may end up communicating and be very effectively, right? But also, and actually to some degree, I derided it so much. I had somebody on a podcast who happens to be a highly qualified, but highest ranking for 32 years in the Royal Marines, but he's the highest ranking black officer in the Marines. Okay. And also, his name is Scotty Mills. He sends me a, right? But he's used the one that is coloured as well.
Oh,
I'm
brilliant.
kind of going, even worse. It kind of, like, you've double incensed me. Right?
I know.
First of all, where is this prejudice coming from? Why do we need somebody with a coloured thumbs up?
It's learnt behaviour, I suppose, but we've got a friend at the moment, their son's just gone off travelling in Australia, and they're sending him, everything okay, son? Things going okay? That's what they get. That's what they get. No, we've been here. This is what we've been doing. I've really enjoyed it, or I didn't like that so much. No detail, just a thumbs up. Yeah.
I think actually it's interesting as well, and I go back to your experience of a parent and also your own mum and dad and the influence of them as parents as well, is that I've spent quite a bit of time working with a family who have a son who's also very, very challenging. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that people don't do is they don't have those conversations about these are some of the things that you could do. Here are options. Yeah. Here you could do this. Have you ever tried? Why don't you? Mm-hmm. Have you considered? And actually those conversations, those parental skills conversations haven't taken place. And if you look at your partner's parents and so forth, having fostered children, you learn very, very quickly about the adaptability and the flexibility that you need to deal with lots of different people. Yeah. We're not all the same, we're all very different, but people don't recognise that quite often.
No, and I suppose it's just normal to us because it's the way we've been brought up.
Sure.
And we've both been around a lot of different scenarios, so it's just something that I suppose naturally you think about, and you don't recognise that it's not necessarily a normal or across the board thing. So that's
I mentioned it in a previous podcast that I was a part of, that I was watching Freddie Flintoff with all these kids. Okay. He's trying to make a cricket team out of it, and their behaviour is pretty off the scale. It's appalling, really. But I kind of look at it, I go, well, that's how the kids I used to teach behaved. Right? Most of the kids I was around behaved like that, with no respect for authority, and actually their misbehaviour, trashing equipment and so forth, was incredible. Yeah. But the lovely, great credit that I would give is that people in those situations think you're going to shout at them, you're going to bawl at them, you're going to threaten them and do whatever it is. Actually, Freddie understood that the only way you're going to change it is by changing his behaviour. Yes. And I think your message, which has come through so strong in this, is that you recognise as a firm of accountants, it's about what all of you do together, which will change that perception and how people behave and what's actually going on.
Yeah, definitely. It's a journey, and you're not going to get everyone there all at once as well. That's the other thing you've got to recognise, is that it takes time to embed something in a culture of an organisation.
Yeah, it does. But also I would say going back to you, when you go back and people say, where have you been, what you've been doing and so forth, give them the fullest explanation you possibly can and give them the opportunity to go and watch it, because between you and I, once we've actually gone through it and checked it all out and everything else, then I will post it up on YouTube so they can actually watch it. And I would say to all of them is to recognise your success for the future is all about what you all do collectively, how you as a team work together to change who you are. Because from having grown from just two of you back in the office under weird sort of circumstances, and that organic growth has taken place, it's what you as a team do and what it is that you as a team communicate in all of your conversations.
Yes. And as much as we can say that, it's actually making people believe it and do it, isn't it?
Yeah, but they live it. That's when they believe it.
They do. And I'm really, really lucky. I'm so lucky. I've got an excellent team.
Sure.
And they're all lovely people.
Good.
which is half the battle. One, isn't it, immediately? And you've got a variety of personalities. So I have the luxury of being able to try and personality match people coming through the door to which members of my team I feel will suit them best.
Right.
Which I don't think everyone can say. So I do feel incredibly lucky with that.
I think when you build and when you build a team and when you build that, then it's about how do they get that and live that message every single day.
Yes, definitely.
They are the firm. They are the face of the firm.
They are, definitely. And we try and get their faces out there, and we try and encourage them to be proactive about their relationships. And part of that is pick up the phone, have a conversation with somebody.
Correct.
Don't just send them an email, unless that's what they've asked for, of course, which is fine. But in all other circumstances, pick up the phone, offer support, check in on them. Is everything okay? Is there anything we can do? It's a really simple thing to ask. And a lot of the time, it opens up a conversation for something that we wouldn't have known about.
Yeah, but
otherwise.
that's learnt behaviour, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. It's learnt behaviour, and they need to learn to do that.
Yeah.
So, in the work that I'm involved in at the moment, I've come to the conclusion, and I really have come to the conclusion, and I want to reflect it back to you as well, is that when I talk about customer service, I've talked about it in all sorts of ways, and people think it's mechanistic. And I hate the fact that it's become distance. I like dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
And I hate having to scan everything and so forth. Although it may be expedient and quick.
Yes.
Right, I went into a store the other day, and the lady who was serving me, right, and there were all these machines and they were all empty. I walked in and I kind of looked at her. I did the transaction and I looked at her and I said, I like dealing with people. And she was really quite shocked, I think. Thinking, occasionally you'll get nutters walking here and there.
Who am I dealing with?
I could see her being perplexed by my comment.
Oh.
But at the same time, I've come to the conclusion that service is a feeling.
Yes.
And it's also when you go to a place where you feel good, where you feel comfortable, and you feel it's all about you and about how you feel.
Yes.
That's an atmosphere that's created. And I don't think people understand how significant that is. And it's a team effort.
Yeah. It has to be everybody.
Everybody has to do that. And I don't care what your role is. I don't care what your responsibility is.
Yeah.
I actually care that everybody, and I mean this in not a disparaging way, and that goes from the cleaner to the people, whoever they may be, who meet customers, that they're all part of that team and they feel an inclusivity, or else they don't.
Yes. And that's where I make an effort every day to go and talk to all of my team as well. Because it's a simple thing, just saying hello, how's everyone's day?
It sounds very strange, but because I had quite a big group of people who came from Romania who worked in the company, right, culturally and so forth, whenever they come into work, they shake hands with people.
Okay.
So I used to walk around and shake hands with everybody and say hello and make sure my first thing, I got in, put my bag down, and then went for a walk around to talk to every single person.
Yeah. If I go back and it's not until 2:00 in the afternoon, I'll still go around before I turn my computer on.
Good.
So, is everything okay? Is there anything you need me to help with? What's going on? Do you want me to prioritise something for you? Just let me know. Is there anything you need to chat with me about?
And live that on a day-by-day basis.
Before I sit down.
So critical. Absolutely critical. Do you know what? I think we've got to a stage, and I also say to you, if you can live and be the change you want to see, then I think you are not going to be successful. You're going to be meteorically successful.
Hopefully. No, we do really well. We have experienced massive growth, and a lot of that has been to do with exactly what you're saying. And simple things like during COVID, we had a WhatsApp group that all of our clients could choose to join if they wanted to. But then there's a government announcement that affects the majority of people in that group. We're giving an update in that group, so everyone's getting what they need at the same time. So they had incredible value and then they had the opportunity to ask questions, but also if one person asked a question, everyone was seeing it and seeing the response. So everyone was getting that learning opportunity from those questions. But from our perspective, we then didn't have 200 phone calls because
You'd actually dealt with it right at the base, yeah.
I would say we were probably 24-hour accountants during COVID. However, it gave us a great basis of relationship with everyone, a lot of goodwill. And we stopped the group mainly because what people ask now is more specific to their individual circumstances, so it needs an individual response. But if anything was to happen like that again, we would reopen it immediately because it just gave so much value and support to people in the moment.
It's interesting, actually, because you mentioned COVID, and I look at it, and I really, yesterday, the secretary who was responsible for education was actually talking about what happened, and you listen to the crisis that they got themselves into. But in that crisis, we managed to damage a generation of people. Those young people going through school, some kids have never, ever recovered from that.
No, and I think that's precisely where my mum's current role comes in as well, because those children that she is currently supporting are, say, 4 or 5 years old. So they were the generation that were born during COVID, didn't necessarily have that usual socialisation that happens in that early period because they couldn't access
So they suffered as
groups,
a result of it.
Baby groups or...
I don't think we've even begun to understand how significant that is and how it's permeated our society.
Yes. And you've got a lot of children who, because they didn't have that early socialisation, that has formed a lot of their early years. I mean, Princess Catherine, she does a lot, doesn't she, around early years education and how vital those early years are for development. And through no fault of the parents or their own, these children couldn't access any of those things for quite some time in their formative years. So it will inevitably have an impact.
Okay, I think what you've achieved, I wish you every success for the future.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for having me on.
No, I think you've been such a star. You really have.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here.
That's a pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.